So today we're going to have a special guest. Jeff Land, teacher and author, is going to come talk to us about fascism, which is the tool that the corporations and the wealthy are using to consolidate their power. And also we're going to return to talking about the caravan, and we'll talk about whatever else people need to talk about today. Randa is joining us from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, so she can, here's Jeff, so she can sing our opening song. So let's mute ourselves so we can sing along and harmonize our bodies.
Ooh, very good. Okay. Lyrics are in the chat. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, well, I woke up this morning with my mind just stayed on justice. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on justice. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on justice. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Well, I'm a walking and talking with my mind stayed on justice. I'm walking and talking with my mind stayed on justice. I'm walking and talking with my mind. Oh, yeah, stayed on justice. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Now I woke up this morning with my mind just stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's so thrilling. I'm thrilled in my heart to see everyone. I can't see all the screens at the same time. So in a minute, you might have to shout out. I just want to welcome everyone to week number 192 of Tuesdays with Tillis. We are a community of nonviolent resistance. We have become a community, and we are becoming more determined, and we gather to look at painful truths together. And when we look at them together, we find that that we can metabolize them, that we can metabolize the trauma of this time. So I want to invite everyone into your body and just take in the strength of this gathering, the determination of this gathering. And if you're here for the first time, raise your hand or shout out, because I may not see you. I see Joy Javis's grandson, who's probably here for the first time. Welcome. And who else is welcome here for the first time? Anyone? Tara M. Tara, welcome, welcome, welcome. And I want to welcome Jeff Land, who we know, friend of ours, who's been with us many times, who's our guest speaker today. And once again, want to recognize Anna Blackburn from the Poor People's Campaign, who we're going to return to the subject of our upcoming Monday that we're pretty excited about in a minute. Anna, you asked us just before our opening, what would be the third thing that we would want to impress on Senator Tillis and Mitch McConnell? And you're right, we've been looking at the Senate legislative calendar and Tillis's votes for almost 4 years now. So I want to ask everyone, and we can discuss this. We're having this car caravan on Monday with the Poor People's Campaign, and already we know that we want to bring the SCOTUS nomination, just the fact of the SCOTUS nomination. It doesn't even matter who she is, but the fact of the SCOTUS nomination and Tillis and Burr's intent to vote for it, which they said before they even knew who it was. But so that is a really big issue. The other thing is we have hungry, jobless, homeless neighbors, and there needs to be a COVID relief package like yesterday, like 4 weeks ago when the House passed the HEROES Act, and there still isn't one. And yet they can vote for a Supreme Court nominee. So we really want to pound Tillis, Burr, and McConnell about that. But what would be the third? Let's just give a little time to this. What would be the third issue?
Healthcare.
Healthcare. Healthcare may be the one. Let's hear if there are other ones that could vie for healthcare.
Protecting the vote.
Say it again.
Protecting the vote.
Protecting the vote. I want to say that watching Tillis's tweets and his Facebook posts, it's really very nauseating. But I agree that it might be healthcare, but I also want to say that he has been really pounding on supporting the police and just willfully ignoring that a lot of the violence, or may we say maybe 95 or 6% of the violence, is coming from the police. So people all over the country are protesting police violence and being met with police violence. Now, this just might be a little too complicated for him to understand. But something that was really disturbing is that one of the topics for the debate tonight, there were 5 topics listed. One was healthcare, but it said race and violence. And even putting those two things together just makes me want to throw up, because the truth is that part of what this election and this court is about is consolidating the power of the wealthy and consolidating the power of white supremacy. So I just want to keep raising that, because Tillis is managing and Trump is managing to conflate those things so that everyone in their base can be afraid of us. Thoughts about that?
The militarization of the police is real.
Yeah.
Especially against Black lives.
Yeah.
I definitely hear that. Marcy put in the chat the peaceful transfer of power. I don't think Tillis is our only audience. I think the reporters, if we're lucky, there will be a newspaper story and then people will read it, in which case I think a lot of Americans have not got that message yet. That ties to me. That's frightening in a way that might get people's attention. Good.
And Sandy put domestic terrorism, which we know is the white guys with the guns. Yes.
I think the other thing that's really been sabotaged by the Trump administration has been any effort to confront the difficulties of climate change.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's right.
And I really hope that that's covered in the presidential debates, because it's not a subject on the first one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead, honey, jump in.
I think another issue, and I cannot get my arms around it, and it might not be the kind we can use on the 5th, but it's simply the emergence of the plutocracy in this country, the emergence of the wealthy class, because that destroys everything else. It destroys the power of the vote. It destroys health care, because there's no health care for the rest of us. No COVID relief, because the rich aren't worried about it. But the emergence of the plutocracy in this nation and the destruction of democracy is a real issue.
Yep. Thank you. Kleptocracy. Yeah. Go ahead,
Will
Mike.
people understand that?
Yeah.
I think they understand stealing our votes, not counting our votes, which is really,
It is real. Yes. Michael, go ahead.
The only remedy for the kleptocracy and the plutocracy and this whole wealth at the top 1% for over a period of 40 years with wage suppression and holding health care over people's heads. The only remedy is democratic socialism. And it means educating people about the meaning of that word and pulling people.
I totally agree.
So we don't get, killed like Bernie. We don't get killed like Bernie. But we use the word progressives then and push hard for those policies.
Okay. Yeah. Mike Eisenberg also wrote in the chat, economic inequality, which is just ridiculous. Yeah. Children in cages, Anne said. Elena?
So I love all of this because, I love all of you and you have brains that are just amazing to me. But let's fashion this that we have 3 speakers and let's not reinvent the wheel here. And let's find 3 people that we know can represent our 3 areas. Our 3 areas. So if we kind of back into it that way, these are all magnificent ideas, but we just need to let's think about 3 people that could represent that and the most powerful of those 3 things. Does that make sense?
All of these are so powerful for me that I'm kind of going in the direction of what someone else said, which is what can the people of North Carolina understand? Because when you start talking about, systemic racism, systemic poverty, and, is it what will actually send them to the polls? It might be healthcare. I don't know.
I think it is healthcare.
Healthcare. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Anna.
Healthcare. The reason why I think healthcare is because people are not making the connection of the emerging of the wealthy. They are just not. I can assure you of that. I live in rural Harnett County. This is David Lewis territory. Harnett County is known for the 2nd largest with the most Ku Klux Klan. And when you drive in this rural area, all you see is Trump signs. People think he is very smart to get away with what he's getting away with the taxes, which tells you they are not making the connection. Racism, white supremacy is above all that, even at the expense of their own interests on a daily basis. So when we talk about healthcare, you're talking about that now healthcare is going to be one that's going to touch everyone in its class, right? Because healthcare is going to become this COVID-19 will become a pre-existing conditions, which we've already heard, which means it is not just touching the poor or disenfranchised, it is going to start touching everyone. So if this administration does not have a healthcare in plan, when they take away the ACA, that's what needs to be hammered in, right? Because one of the things that's going to happen when they replace RBG's seat is going to be, they've got a case that they're going to be hearing on the ACA. And they haven't had a plan in the last 3 years. They didn't have a plan before then. So once healthcare, if they do away with the ACA, you're going to see people then totally rethinking about what really have they done to themselves in this society by putting a party that put themselves and corporation above. But they're not making that connection right now. People are just not making that connection because there's not one thing that truly is touching all of us. But very soon, it will touch everyone, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I think that one of the speakers needs to be a healthcare speaker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we okay with that? It's urgently as we feel about every single other thing. The third thing, healthcare that doesn't manage to bring in COVID. Yes.
I'm totally into the healthcare, but I think maybe Anna ought to talk because the person who speaks needs to be making the connections. They need to not be policy. They need to not be, wonky.
Well, we may talk a little possibly. We'll go ahead and make sure that we have that impacted person so that people can connect with that impacted person. Maybe if that's not even, a lot of times people think it's just the poor, right? The most poorest person that is the only one not getting healthcare, and we know that that's not true.
Right.
We know that's not true. There are people that can actually afford healthcare, but can't afford healthcare because they can't afford paying their copay because the copay is so high. They can afford paying for the healthcare, but they really can't, right? So if we can get a situation where we have maybe someone like that addresses healthcare, but say, listen, healthcare doesn't look like, someone homeless lying on the street because they can't afford it, or healthcare doesn't look like a single mom, right? But healthcare looks like maybe somebody that's making $50,000, $60,000 and can't even afford to see a physician.
Okay. I think we're sold on healthcare.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. That was a great opening, I think, to moving on to Jeff, because all of these things, the reason why we're not getting any action on climate change, the reason why there's a kleptocracy, the reason why there's a takeover of an autocracy, the reason why all these people are on board is because they're using fascist tools so that the wealthy and corporations can continue their plantation way of life. So Jeff Land is our speaker. He's going to talk about fascism. He's an author. He's a teacher. We know him. And I'm gonna spotlight you, Jeff, okay? While you're talking. Welcome.
Hello, everybody, though. Thank you so much for inviting me to this project. I know I've been AWOL a little bit, but your persistence and dedication and radicalism of this group is just a shining light, and it's always thrilling to be with you. So thank you. And I was told that my part of this conversation was going to center on the F word, so what the fuck should we be doing? I'm sorry, I just had to say that. And for you snowflakes, I'm warning you, you may hear that naughty expression one more time. But as for fascism, I want to ask a question that I will not answer. What do we gain by using this term so promiscuously? I sometimes feel that, like the other F word, our constant use of the term may neutralize some of its powers. And now to get nerdy with the quote that I was trying to share, which is tucked in there, I want to just share this quote from de Tocqueville, which I love. The kind of oppression which democratic peoples are threatened will resemble nothing that had preceded it in the world. Our contemporaries would not find its image in their memories. I myself seek in vain an expression that exactly reproduces the idea that I form of it for myself and that contains it. The old words, despotism and tyranny, are not suitable. The thing is new, and therefore I must try to define it since I cannot name it. Now, there's much to be said about this. De Tocqueville writes this in the mid-1830s, and he's been in this country just for a few months. But nonetheless, it is as living today as it was then. I want you to note that for him, the unprecedented oppression that de Tocqueville warns about is uniquely American and uniquely springs from a democratic polis. And now you might say that today we've given this threat a European name, fascism, and with the checklist in this week's tiny letter, we have some elements of a definition for its emergence in the American context. That list, which includes sexism, militarism, control of the media, racism, and others, and the many lists that have been published since 2016, I think usefully highlight something that George Fredrickson once said about racism. Fascism might first be seen as a scavenger ideology. It doesn't have fixed categories, but lives off a constant revolving mix of noxious fragments of other social pathologies, highlighting this one and then the other, depending on the circumstances and the culture in which it is growing. And so, with this in mind, we have a name, we have some key attributes, and I still wonder what is gained by calling our president a fascist. And this question begins with my own experience, and I'm sure an experience I share with almost everyone on this call. Every president that I've been aware of since Johnson, except maybe Gerald Ford, has been called a fascist by someone I know, often by someone I deeply respect. And indeed, with the case of Ford, let's not forget that he was president of Yale's America First Foundation in 1941, foundation made famous by Lindbergh. And especially, I'm sure most of us remember, during the reign of Reagan, the F word rolled easily off our tongue. And one of the most important books on the topic, Friendly Fascism, was written in 1985, a book which warned us not to focus on Germany or Italy when one was concerned about the creeping authoritarian tendencies in American politics. Now, to give away the game, I actually think it's important to see every president in my lifetime as a tool of corporate capital. But might it be those with less transparent authoritarian tendencies, Obama or Clinton, who may actually be more toxic in the role they play? Until 1940, whether fascism was a positive and indeed a progressive ideology was not altogether clear. When Hitler was Time's Man of the Year in 1939, he was both despised and widely admired in equal measure. Around the world, people proudly called themselves fascist and felt no need to hide their allegiances. It's only after the war and the camps that the term became noxious. And it is also after the war that multiple conflicting definitions of the term challenged both scholars and activists to come up with a consensus just what the term might mean, a problem that we still face to this day. If you look at the literature on fascism, there's essentially almost no agreement on what a precise definition might mean. In 1946, George Orwell would write, quote, "Fascism now has no meaning except insofar as it defines something not desirable." All right, and now let's turn with a focus to some language on the left. It's the paradigm that I do find most useful. And here we might recall Bertolt Brecht's famous challenge: how can anyone tell the truth about fascism unless he is willing to speak out about capitalism, which brings it forth? Since the mid-30s, Marxists have held a steady focus on the class antagonism that fascism contains. Fascism, quote, gives expression to lower and middle-class demands, but cannot advance their needs in substance, since in practice, fascist rulers are aimed principally at promoting capitalism. It should be noted that by the time left parties and theorists identified what they saw as the core of fascist ideology in the 30s, it was already too late for them to respond, a tragedy which was highlighted by the original Antifa movements in England and Germany in the 1980s. Now, this paradigm, which looks at the precarious position of a very specific economic strata as the base of fascism, surely is what animates us today. Trump received a remarkable 77% of the vote among those who said their financial situation had worsened in the preceding years. Few theorists identified the anxiety and anger of this uniquely precarious group better than Steve Bannon. His meticulous class analysis was something which neither Obama or the Clintons chose to engage. And indeed, with NAFTA, the Clintons or Bill may have been responsible for it. Bannon accurately remarked, I don't think there's any doubt in the world that we're in the beginning state of a crisis that we cannot avoid. And then he pivots to his neo-fascist tendencies. It was the left globalists who destroyed the American working class. The issue now is about Americans looking to not get fucked over. And as we know, this strata, the white, high school educated, uncertain of what the future holds, continues to believe that building a wall will make America great. All evidence to the contrary. And now I noticed in the chat right before, as we were starting, Mike Eisenberg said, can anyone explain how his approval rating is at 46%? The pandemic high. And in my talk, which is coming to an end shortly, I have not said anything about the psychological dimensions which induce people to believe things which are contrary to fact. But I will be including in a short selection of articles a tremendous essay by my friend Arlene Stein, which talks about the psychology of shame and how that relates to Trump's supporters. That he has used the term loser to reference, I think, over 300 different people or categories. His reference to folks in the military was hardly an anomaly, and that's because so many people in this strata are terrified of losing what Barbara Ehrenreich said, the fear of falling. But I want to conclude with some possibilities suggested by the political scientist Samuel Moyn, whose thoughts align with my own to some extent. Perhaps we need to spend as much, if not more time, worrying about what we will do if Joe Biden wins the presidency, rather than how to handle Trump's tantrums when he loses. How do we prevent the inevitable narrative which will treat Trump's presidency as an aberration, whose rise and fall will become a morality tale, promoting patriotic rectitude in which America is once again seen as the bastion of anti-fascist heroics that overcame Trump, much as we once slew Hitler? Those who warned against the coming of fascism will congratulate themselves for saving the home of the free and redeeming the land of the brave, which somehow lurched to the brink and was pulled back. They will bracket this interlude as if it was an accident, much as Germans after World War II now identify their 12-year mistake. Are we going to be able to continue our Tuesdays in another vein, perhaps coffee with Cal, with the understanding that Trump is an emblem of the friendly fascism that persists throughout the interstices of our political system, one that cannot be voted out in a single election? I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Jeff. We can have some discussion if that's okay with you.
It would be fine with me. I was trying to be provocative.
Yeah.
Not too much. I could be more provocative, but I decided I like you guys too much. So it's like.
Yeah. So let's have some discussion. You could speak up or put things in the chat.
Hello. I just put in the chat all the mass movements that have started since George Floyd are not going away. The movement for climate is not going away. That's going to we have to put pressure on Biden after the honeymoon. That's it.
Thank you.
I was asked the question, did I feel by actually various people when we were trying to do, I don't know if anyone's been following some of the videos that we started to do for the election on various issues, but I was asked, did I think that, as you eloquently put, we're going to have to continue outside of just Trump if Biden happens to win, because all that we're facing did not happen under one administration.
Right.
Okay, this did not happen under one administration. So I've been asked, do I feel like all of our problems will be solved by one election? And I say, absolutely no, they will not. In fact, this is when the fight begins, because this did not take place under one administration. Right. And there's going to be a lot of work to be done just to fix and undo what has happened, but not so much what has happened, but what has always happened in this nation. So yes, I think that we will have to switch this from Tuesday with Tillis and have coffee with Cal. So yes, that's all I had to say.
Thank you so much. Diane Little, go right ahead. You have to.
Yes, I was actually writing in the chat, but what I wanted to say is that there are many levels, many layers for us to unpeel. And I don't care who it is in office. Even when Obama was in office, there were a lot of things that we held his feet to the fire about and made him accountable. I can't imagine in this experiment called democracy that we would allow anyone in that office who we are not going to be objective about. It's too important a situation, and that particular person rules the world. And I don't mean to be facetious when I say that. The appearance of an American attack or an American slight, or if America turns their back on certain countries. When I was in New York and I worked a little bit in the UN, we were treated so well because no one wanted to piss off the Americans, because they had the power and they had the money. So even if it's an appearance of power, to sustain the safety that we have enjoyed, to sustain some of the creative minds that we have born, we have to hold anybody with their feet to the fire to make sure that the country that we want is the country that we get.
Thank you. Yeah, it's become more and more clear that we're just getting started here. What else?
May I ask a question of Jeff?
Go right ahead.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Jeff. One of the things that has been talked about recently has been that we're in a moment of time, maybe a juncture where things that have needed attention for a long time possibly can now. Do you have any thoughts about that? Or do you think this is pie in the sky?
Well, I mean, I think there's an enormous amount of political agitation, probably more than I've seen in quite a while. So, yes, you can imagine that if folks, from the Bernie camp and outwards, Black Lives Matter, I mean, we can start naming all the different movements that are in motion right now, can figure out some way to constellate together and push. It's hard to imagine someone like Biden being the vehicle for that change. I mean, I know there are folks that look to Harris as a potential in terms of presidential leadership. In terms of North Carolina, I think it'll be interesting to see where Cal will come down on something like balanced budget issues. Is he going to move, pivot towards fiscal prudence, or will he continue with more of a social welfare stance? And I just don't know. I mean, I think I could see things moving either way, but clearly the notion that we don't have enough money to address our social issues has been blown up. We obviously have trillions of dollars, which we can use if we choose to deploy them in ways that we want. So the argument that we don't have the means for addressing this, I think, no longer hold. And again, what we can do with that, because I think everyone on this call can just feel how Biden could easily become an Obama pragmatist and say, yes, we've put the trillions out for pandemic relief, but now how are we going to pay for it? And that question should simply be off the table. I mean, in some way. But, But
Yeah.
that's just me talking, it's that my kids are the ones who are going to have to suffer, not me, as far as that goes. So in that vein, we might see some much more fundamental shifts than we've seen up till now. I wonder about what we can say, like, I forget the previous woman who spoke, but in 2009, did we hold Obama's feet to the fire? I mean, I'm somewhat skeptical of that to some degree. And I think what happened in 2009, 2010 should be a cautionary tale about, what we want to make sure doesn't recur in terms of how we're going to solve the problems that we're facing right now.
Thanks. Mike Eisenberg?
Yeah, I think one of the things that gives me hope, and I haven't had any for a long time, are the people in the Trump administration that are coming out and blowing the whistle. And the thing that really gave me hope this morning was the juror in the Breonna Taylor trial
Yes.
who said the attorney general is lying and forced them to disclose the grand jury testimony. So those things, I think you're starting to see people that are not in power that are coming to the forefront, that are making the people in power start to think that maybe they're wrong, and hopefully we can continue to do that.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning Breonna Taylor. The Poor People's Campaign is holding an online event right now about Breonna Taylor and SCOTUS, and watch for what's coming out and how to respond. I'm gonna try to forward an email along with the chat. If you don't get the chat from Jewel, you can put your email in the chat box. We try to get it out to people because sometimes there's good links, and there's the toolbox for Monday. I think Cal Cunningham, we feel like we're on Cal's side, and we also have some ideas about how he can do better. So we're going to start giving him those ideas hopefully next week.
On that note, Karen, this is Amy. I would like some suggestions of from everybody in the group or anybody in the group that wants to make sure that their concern is going to be put out there.
Can we spend a few minutes on that now? Okay. Cliff's here, Amy's here. What would be the very top of your list for what we want to say to Cal? Mark.
I would like to understand from Cal how he's not going to fall into the Tillis trap. Yeah. And the Tillis trap was he did not hold town hall meetings with a broader group of citizens. It was always Republican citizens, or he only took questions from Republican citizens. And I'd like to see how Kyle's going to make sure that he's not going to be Democratic centric, that he's going to represent all of North Carolina.
Top of my list too. People who have watched the debate, how do you think he's done on the debates? I have not watched them.
Much better than the second one.
Yeah, the second one's much better. Yeah.
Much.
Good.
Much better.
Good.
No silly grins and laughing this time.
Good. Good.
Hey, this is Tara Romano. I was thinking about a question for Cal Cunningham. I just really think we need all of our senators to talk about what they're going to do about a Supreme Court that is really going to be put in place to roll back so many of our rights. And honestly, I think the Senate's going to need to be aggressive to deal with that. And I don't know if maybe we can ask him about that, because there is a possibility of a very illegitimate Supreme Court just blocking anything trying to get done without some, and there's no reason that the Supreme Court can't change its inside. Like, there's no reason all these things are being said, well, we have to have 9 days. Like, none of that is true, right? And there's other countries where we can learn things from too, about how they have their Supreme Court set up and stuff. So I think it'd be useful and I just think we really need a commitment from the Senate is the one body that can really help us with that. And I'd like to hear about what his thoughts are on that.
So keep putting ideas in the chat for Amy and Cliff. Anything else before we move on?
Emphasis again on Medicaid expansion. Always have that question, and the what would he do with the defense budget, such as North Carolina has one, on military bases that are contaminated. All the water is contaminated, so it's a climate crisis issue right here in North Carolina in many ways, but PFAS has become a huge issue for people all over the state in terms of water quality.
Thank you, Liv. Thank you. So one thing that I want to make sure that we at least touch on today is, how to stop a coup. He's kind of been working on a coup for a while now, right? And he's got his army out at the polls. Now, increasingly, it seems like it won't work. But I think if you watched Rachel last night, she was kind of warning us that he'll do anything now to stay in power. And we kind of always knew that. I remember one time we had a family separation rally in front of Tillis's office, and someone said, if he will do this, he will do anything. And I just felt how true that was, and that's what we've been seeing ever since. So I feel like I just want to spend a few minutes opening up the floor for ideas around that. I know many of us are doing the George Lakey trainings, and they have been extended. There's a link to how to find them in the tiny letter. Many of us have also done Ready the Ground training, how to be marshals if we all need to hit the streets. And I just think we all have thoughts about this, and so I wanted to open it up.
If the state houses get involved, you realize that there are more Republican state houses in the House of Representatives. It's not the representatives, it's their state houses will be the one to make the decision.
About what?
Who gets to be president?
Yeah, it's the number of states that are represented by Republicans are more than the number of states represented by Democrats.
Referring to the Electoral College.
One vote per state, not 435 votes.
Right.
So what can we do about that?
If state legislatures decide that they're going to negate the will of the voters and tell their electors to vote for Trump, that's a big problem.
Could our General Assembly do that?
Yes.
Yes.
But is there an opportunity for the governor to overrule it? I thought I had heard that there was.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
He can veto things, but the veto can be overridden.
Correct.
That might not be allowed to be vetoed.
Yeah, but wait, we have enough Democrats in the NCGA to overrule a veto now, don't we? I mean,
You might not have veto power over that.
Yeah, right. It's an article that's in the Atlantic. I'll try to find it. That the 6 southern states that have general assemblies that are controlled by the Republican Party, if all of the drumming up of these ballots the absentee ballots are bad, they're no good, they're fake, and that to me, I don't know this for a fact, this is opinion, that the 2 Republican people on the North Carolina State Board of Elections resigned as a setup to say, see, even our representatives of the Republican Party on the Board of Elections have resigned in protest, even though they went along with the changes and agreed to the changes. Yep. That the General Assembly can then say, well, because we do not believe Biden actually won, then we will take the will of the people as the reigning class of the General Assembly and send only Republican electors.
Doesn't this all point to, though, that if we have a real blue tsunami, they're not going to be able to do this?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. But right now, the numbers are not supporting that. That's reality.
Okay. So there's a ton of ways to keep working to get out the vote. A ton. A lot of them are in the tiny letter. I know you probably all know of other ways. Please send them to me. I think we have to keep putting that out there. that we just have to work really hard in the next, 5 weeks? Is it only 5 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I tweeted this about a week or so ago. We have all these contingencies that we're kind of thinking through, which is good, but let's not forget the first step. We need to win the election.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of what to do, it seems to me it's twofold what our job is right now. And one is what Mark and Karen are talking about, which is continuing to get out the vote. And the second is preparing for a contested election and a potential coup. And Lakey, for the folks who've watched the seminar, talked about using this time to prepare, not just thinking about what we would do after the election. One of the suggested follow-ups, I think it was from the Maryland Quaker groups, was the pledge to elected officials asking them to not recognize the results unless they were fairly decided. And if I can find it, I'll put it in the chat. But it seemed to me that taking that to different groups and networks, like the Poor People's Campaign and all the other groups represented here, they have a pledge and then ask groups to sign on to it, so that we really might be thinking about getting our elected officials now to be thinking and talking about how they would deal with a contested election and a potential coup, even as we do the get out the vote. It's not one or the other.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with that. This choosedemocracy.us, there's been links to it in the last couple tiny letters. It's really important. I think that we all look at that and spread the word through social media and our networks.
Yeah, and another way to do that is to be clear that we're not voting against Trump, we're voting for democracy. And I think that resonates with people.
And something, thank you for that. That's exactly right. Like, something that he keeps talking about is that a lot of us activists, we're talking about social change, social justice, but there's kind of a different way of organizing what you're just trying to hang on to the hope of democracy. You're putting your energy into the middle. You're not attending to the left or the right. I mean, I hate those terms, but you know what I'm talking about. Trying to appeal to moderates that will just agree to count the votes. It's not a lot to ask for. It's not a left-wing request. Are you feeling hopeful about the election at this point?
No.
A little bit. No, yes. Okay.
I swing wildly from
Cautiously hopeful, yeah. Because when you go down east and see all those signs, and then you see even going west on Highway 62, there were more forest for instead of Cooper. And, it's like Cooper never met with any of us over fracking in the last 5 years. But I surely don't want forest.
Right.
I mean, we haven't even talked about that part of it,
Right.
Like Bishop Barber said, he doesn't care who wins. Well, we do care, but I mean, no matter who wins the elections, we're going to have to do the same thing. We're just going to have to keep on fighting.
Yes.
So I've heard that there's a women's march scheduled for October 17th. Has anybody else heard about that? I don't know. I hope that it's huge and it will have a big impact on the election.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
Okay. Well, they do have one already going in Durham. So there's going to be
okay.
I've been with the Raleigh Women's March, and so has Galia for like 4 years. And I haven't heard anything, but the woman who was trying to be the organizer last year just asked me yesterday how to get the email list. So maybe she's been contacted. I'll see if I'll follow up with her and see if we know anything.
I think Rachel mentioned it last night. So it's making national news.
So
we know.
Go ahead, Sarah. Yeah.
Just I think it is kind of hit or miss during a pandemic time about how willing people are to mobilize publicly, and so I think that's something we always need to consider with these marches going forward. But I do think mass mobilization is going to be a real key to what we need to do to ensure that all the votes are counted, because I think we need to really think about how we're going to mass mobilize after the election, because honestly, that's something that I think the media and people in power respond to. I mean, if there's ways that we can also show mass mobilization, people doing it from their homes, that's good too. But also, I think about all these opportunities we have prior to election to sort of, if practice whatever comfort level you have with being out there and mobilizing, because some people aren't going to feel comfortable. Others, maybe they're comfortable doing it once a week. You know, like yesterday I was at a rally. We were really good about everyone had to wear masks. We were all spaced and that kind of stuff. So just thinking about like when it comes to marches and things like that, maybe set our expectations, because it is a time where lots of people are still trying to stay home. And they should, if they feel like that's really what they need to do.
I just pulled it up. The Women's March organization is planning a nationwide protest on October 17th, opposing President Donald Trump and his move to fill the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat. Last week, the organization posted on social media stating they were planning a socially distancing march in the district and more than 30 other cities just days before Senate Republicans vote on Trump's pick to replace Ginsburg.
I think that's going to be huge. I think that march in Washington is going to be huge.
I think you have said 4 days. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have not been out at all on the streets since COVID, but I think I'm going to attend that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to mask up and go.
Yeah. Yeah, some of us were in Washington during the Kavanaugh hearings, and it was one of the most powerful things I've ever experienced. And hundreds of us were arrested. I believe probably thousands of us will be arrested this time.
May I tell one quick funny story about the Kavanaugh arrest? When I went with a couple of people and we had our tickets, we knew that we could only be in there 25 minutes. And right before I knew we had to leave, the spirit must have come over me. And I yelled up, stood up and said, "Tell the truth," like 3 times. And then the police shrugged me off. Well, I called my husband to tell him I'd been arrested. And I said, "Did you see me?" He said, "Honey, I heard you before I saw them dragging that white-haired lady out."
Somehow the image of the police dragging you off to your arrest is the perfect image to end this session. So we'll do the closing song. Susan will give us some closing words. Thank you, Jeff, again. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Diane. Thank you for everyone who's here for the first time. We're here every week. And I did open a Zoom for Thursday at 11 for any of us who want to talk especially about Monday, but anything you want to talk about. So I'm going to put the words up. And if we mute ourselves, then we can sing.
Hi, everybody. If you don't like who's in there, vote 'em out. That's what election day is all about. That superpower we got is called the ballot box. If you don't like who's in there, vote 'em out. Vote 'em out. Vote 'em out. And when they're gone, we'll sing and dance and shout. We'll bring some great ones in, and we'll find us hope again. And if you don't like who's in there, vote 'em out. November 3rd, we'll show who's got real clout. And we'll resist Trump's throwing things in doubt. We're counting every vote. Send Trump his eviction note. He'll have to go when we say, vote him out. And now we know Trump hid the COVID facts. For that alone, he literally deserves the axe. We'll stop that crazy cult and elect a sane adult and fight like hell, take the Senate back. Vote him out. Vote him out. Yeah, and when they're gone, we'll sing and twist and shout. Yeah, we'll bring some good ones in, and we'll find this hope again. 'Cause we don't like who's in there, vote them out. Get off your ass, let's vote and vote them out.
Thank you. One thing we can count on with this group is that we will smile and laugh at some point during the meeting. And thank you for all of that. Thank you so much. And I just want to acknowledge too, just to say to those who observed Yom Kippur, thank you for your example. We hope you had a gentle fast. I think all of us could use a little examination, a pause. Maybe the whole country could use that, a little time to examine where we are right now and what we need to be doing. So thank you. I also want to acknowledge that today, the Movement for Black Lives has designated as Breathe Act Day. So there's some action you can take to forward that legislation. But again, there's an example. Let's take a deep breath. Remember those who have gone before, those whose breath has been taken too soon, stolen even. And let this meeting, as we take the breath now, fill us with commitment and courage to take the next step. As Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, enduring change happens one step at a time. So we take a deep breath and imagine the next step we can take even today. People say Ruth is up there, getting used to her new digs and strategizing already. And you can imagine that happening. But I also say that Ruth and John Lewis, C.T. Vivian, in their passing, they passed us the baton. Us. It's hard. What a privilege. What an honor to be passed the baton by those giants of civil rights, of justice and equality. And now the baton is in our hands. If you have run a relay or if you've ever watched one, you know that as much as the running and the race, it is in the passing of the baton that the practice goes, and the preparation and the trust. It's in the passing of the baton that the practice goes and the trust. It doesn't just happen. You train for that. You work for that passage of the baton. Ruth, John, they work for that with every step, with every breath of their lives. And now they have entrusted it to us. And it is the baton of fiery dissent. It is the baton of freedom and equality for all. It is the baton of the fundamentals of democracy that is in our hands. But the most memorable races are those in which the person at the lead turns around and slows down and looks back and gives someone who's fallen a hand up. So if you are one who needs to take a moment and catch your breath, we will turn around and give you a hand. And whether you can sprint today or jog or walk or roll or crawl, we are in this race. We are on this lap together as one. So I invite you to unmute yourselves as we say together, forward
together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not
one
step
back. Forward together.
Not step.
Race on.
Thank you all so much.